The other day I got a question on one of the forums from another sailor about, what do I do to maintain my batteries during the off season? So that's what I'm going to talk about for today's video. So first, let's talk about what kind of batteries are on my boat. So I use a 12 volt, 35 amp hour deep cycle AGM battery as my primary battery on the boat. And it's a pretty small battery, and that's because I'm a lake sailor, right? So typically, the most I'm going to do is maybe an overnight, but generally, I sail during the day and then I can take my battery home and recharge it. And the 35 amp hour, one, it's very light, and two, it's more than adequate for the electronics that I have on my boat. I also carry the Torqeedo battery for my Torqeedo outboard, which is a 915 watt hour, 29 volt battery. And then, you don't want to forget about some of your smaller, appliances like spotlights and lanterns. So I carry both a spotlight and a lantern on my boat as well. And so those require a certain kind of maintenance. When it comes to maintaining your batteries, what you have to do is follow the manufacturer's recommendations. And in some cases, that's going to require you to do a little bit of research. So when I bought my 12 volt Duracell battery, for example, it didn't really come with an owner's manual, right? They just hand you the battery in the store. And so I went online and kind of looked up the product sheet and, followed the guidelines that were given there. And so for all of my batteries, the recommendations are that they are stored fully charged and recharged about every 3 months. And so that's what I do. I have a Black & Decker 12 volt battery maintainer that I use for my Duracell 12 volt 35 amp hour battery. Of course, the Torqeedo battery comes with a dedicated charger, and that's a 24 volt AC to DC charger. And then each of the lamps come with a USB type charger. And so, every 3 months, I set a calendar reminder, I plug those things in, top them off, and then store them off the boat in the garage in a nice, cool, dry place. Now, keep in mind that some of the newer batteries, like the lithium iron phosphate batteries, it's recommended that they're stored at 30 to 50% of charge and then only topped off right before they're about to be used. So again, it really comes down to following the manufacturer's guidelines. So another aspect of maintaining your battery is understanding how the charge and discharge cycle affects your battery and its lifespan. So with your 12 volt AGM, deep cycle type batteries, the typical rule of thumb is no more than 50% discharge, which is 12.3 volts. Now, some of the batteries will say, it can be discharged up to 80%, which is 11.4 volts, but you're going to get fewer cycles out of that battery. So with the 12 volt AGM batteries, the more discharged it is each cycle, the fewer cycles you can do. So that can range from as few as 150 to 300 cycles up to like 3,000 cycles, again, depending on how deeply discharged. So the rule of thumb again is 50%, 12.3 volts. Now, that means you're going to have a voltmeter on your boat or some other kind of protection or cutoff device in your electrical system. So for me, I have a voltmeter on my boat, and when I'm using the battery, I carefully monitor the voltage that is remaining on that battery. Now, some of the newer lithium iron phosphate deep cycle batteries can be 100% discharged. So really, you're getting a lot more use out of your lithium iron phosphate batteries than you do out of your lead acid batteries, because you can use 100% of that battery's capacity. And the lithium iron phosphate batteries get thousands more cycles, even with 100% discharge, than your typical lead acid battery at 50%. When you're charging your batteries, you have to make sure you're using the right type of charger for the type of battery you have. So in my example, this Black & Decker 12 volt charger, it can only be used on the AGM lead acid type batteries. It's not appropriate for lithium ion batteries or gel batteries. With the lithium iron phosphate batteries, some of those have step charging, which means that the amperage that is input to the battery changes as the charge of the battery increases. So the best thing to do in that case is to buy your battery and your charger from the same vendor when you purchase the battery. So when you're shopping for batteries for your boat, you want to make sure that you're buying from a trusted source. So a lot of the things that are offered online, the cheap, lithium iron phosphate batteries, which, are still $300, $400, they're not really cheap. But, a lot of the lower cost ones at the same amp hour ratings compared to the name brand ones, some of those are reconditioned batteries that are just repackaged and sold at a lower amp hour rating. And so you have to be really careful. Also a lot of the lithium iron phosphate batteries come with a battery management system, a BMS, on board. And there's different quality BMSs. So, if you buy a name brand quality battery, you're going to get more life out of it. It's going to be more useful for you.